My name's Garry Trinder. I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft, mainly focused around Microsoft 365. In this case, it's going to be Microsoft Teams, and I'm here today to talk to you about Teams Toolkit, but Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio. We had a session last week from John Miller, who went through Teams Toolkit at the high level, and it was very much focused on Visual Studio Code. So there is a Visual Studio Code extension for Teams development, and there was lots of interest around what was coming with Visual Studio. So here we are. Based on that feedback, we're going to have a getting started session with basically, if you're new to Teams development or you're using Visual Studio, you're a C# developer, using .NET, then hopefully this is something that you've been looking for and will help you get started building apps for Microsoft Teams. So let's get started then. So Teams Toolkit is basically an add-on to Visual Studio that's going to add in new Microsoft Teams project templates, and it's going to extend Visual Studio Code with lots of features that's going to make it easier for you to launch your apps, to debug them, and also deploy them as well when you want to get them into Azure. So really, in short, Teams Toolkit is there to help you build Teams apps and fast. So what I'm going to show you today as well is it's all generally available. There's nothing preview in here. So Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio was actually released, made generally available in August of this year. So you may have missed it. You may have been on holiday at the time. It got released with the latest version of Visual Studio 2022, which is 17.3. So I'm going to show you that when we step through how you can install it, how you can create a project and get those apps running. So let's first start with how you can install the toolkit. So one of the things which threw me at first is it's not an extension. So what you actually need is you need the installer to modify your installation of Visual Studio. So download the installer, or if you've got it saved in your downloads somewhere, just launch that and hit modify, and you'll bring up the screens to be able to modify the workloads that you've got installed. And if you take a look under the ASP.NET and web development workload, you will see, if I just click that, down here we have the Microsoft Teams development tools. So basically, if you want to install them, check that box, hit modify, and that will install everything for you. I've actually pre-installed it, so it is still there. I don't actually want to remove it, so I'm gonna close this down right now. Otherwise, that demo is not going to go very well. So yeah, just come into here, tick the box, install it, and that will install Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio for you. Okay, so let's open Visual Studio. So we've got our welcome screen. What I'm just going to go through, step through now the project creation process. So let's create a new project. You'll find that you have under all platforms, you'll have a new option for Microsoft Teams. So let's select that. Only one option for the platform. So Microsoft Teams app. So we're going to select that. Click next, and then we've got our standard give your project a name. So let's call it community call, and I'm going to hit create. And now Teams Toolkit is kicked into action and provided us with a number of different options for different types of templates that we can select from to scaffold our Teams app. So we've got 4 high-level types of apps that we can create. We've got 2 bots. One, notification bot. So this is good for if you're wanting to react to external events in another system. You want to push a message into Teams, maybe with an adaptive card, get some kind of response back. great place to start. So if you choose the notification bot, you do have further options. You can change the type of trigger that you use, and also what technologies are used in the implementation as well. So we have a HTTP trigger using the Web API server, and then we have a mix of HTTP trigger and timer triggers as well, but using Azure Functions as the in the implementation, and then a final option of both triggers together with Azure Functions. We've also got a command bot. So a command bot is kind of your, if you've been using bots, conversational bots where you have commands, commands that you can create, so that people who download the bot can interact with the features of that bot. This is a great way of getting started to be able to scaffold that app and create new commands, and kind of step into those conversational type bots. Third, we've got a tab. Everyone knows what a tab is in Microsoft Teams, I would suspect. So yeah, this is a tab project, which is really quite nice. We'll go and look into this actually. So this is using Blazor behind the scenes in its implementation. It's got some really cool features that the toolkit gives you, some interoperability between C# and the Teams JavaScript SDK as well. Really, really cool. We'll go look at that in a second. And finally, we've got a message extension as well. So basically, if you want to extend that message box with different actions, you can use a message extension in here. Just want to point out that the two bots and the message extension do require ngrok to actually run them. That is a dependency at the moment. So you have to kind of set that up in the background and have that running to use the toolkit. If you're kind of thinking, oh no, I can't use ngrok, Enterprise has decided we can't use it for whatever reason, there are plans to move away from ngrok. Just at the moment, we have that dependency. So if you do face that issue, it'd be great to know that you have that issue for the beginning, so that we can move forward. And it's on our roadmap to move away from ngrok anyway. But the tab, you don't need ngrok. So let's go and create our tab. Okay, so we have created our project, and this has all been scaffolded. So nice, get a bit of a quick start of how you can get up and running quickly with this app. One of the things that I'm going to show you now is the way that the toolkit works with how you set things up. If you watched the session previously for the Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code, you kind of hit F5 and it does everything for you in the background. It's a bit more, I guess, developer driven in Visual Studio. So the actions are more kind of like preparation and then run. Just the one in this version wanted to give developers a lot more control over what was actually happening at different stages through that life cycle. So we have our project that's been scaffolded. I just want to quickly run through this. So if you are familiar with the screen, so we've got your www root folder, we've got an FX folder, we've got some components in there as well. We've got the interop folder, which contains the interop classes between C# and the Teams JavaScript SDK as well. We have our pages and our shared layouts, and also templates as well. The templates is where our manifest lives. So for Teams application, we need a manifest. So this is in here. This is our template. But it also, this project comes with templates for deploying to Azure as well. So you get bicep templates right out of the box, so that when you come to provision, they're already there, which is great. And you can come in and inspect these and modify them however you like, add them in CI/CD pipelines that you might already have, or a great way of getting started. The files as well to take a look at is a permissions.json file. So with this application, when we actually start to run it, it's going to create a app registration for us. So we've got some settings in here where we can define what the permissions are, what the resources are for both delegate and application permissions as well. And I'll just nip back to, as we're talking about config, I'm going to nip back to the FX file as well, where we have lots of project level configurations. We've got some parameters for Azure. These are used by the bicep templates. We've also got configs as well for local development and some project settings. If I look at the local configs, we can see here that we've got some placeholder values for the app name, and these are all reused within the manifest template. So you can add your own properties into here and then reuse, inject them into the templates, so that every time you go to launch your project or run it, in Microsoft Teams, that manifest is going to get updated with all of the values that are in these files. Really nice way of centralizing those properties. Okay, enough of going through the project structure now. Let's actually see how we can run this application. So Teams Toolkit has been added in as a menu item on the project. So I've right-clicked on the project, and we can see that we've got Teams Toolkit, and we can see and expand the options that are available to us. Alternatively, we can go to the project across the menu on the top as well, and we've got Teams Toolkit in there. So two different ways of accessing it. Generally, you're going to go through the right-click method. We've got a few options. So we've got prepare the Teams apps dependencies. So this is what you need to do before you actually do the F5 kind of launching of your application. This is where it's going to kind of do the initial setup, update the manifest, do things in Azure. And this is dependent on different types of projects that you've got. So for example, if this was a bot project, clicking that prepare Teams apps dependencies would also register my bot in the bot framework as well, which is really, really nice. A few other options, which I'm not really going to get into today, but we've got a nice shortcut to the manifest file. So like I showed you before, it was deep in the templates. If you don't want to find it manually, you can just come into the Teams Toolkit and click Open Manifest. And here we go. We've got our manifest file. You can see the placeholder values. So there's lots of configuration values that Teams Toolkit is handling for you in the background. We have our config where our name is being injected in. So that was the config.local.json file. So these ones here will get added in. And you can see that it's actually got all the configuration for the tabs, the identity, domains, and web application info as well. So a lot of the initial groundwork has been covered for you here. But if you want to come in, change the developer name, you can either change it manually in the template, or you can create a configuration property as well and have that dynamic as well. So it's a nice feature that Teams Toolkit provides you, that ability to just create new properties and inject them into the manifest. Right, let's go back to Teams Toolkit and we'll do prepare Teams app dependencies. So one of the things that Toolkit wants to know is, where's your Microsoft 365 tenant? So this is using the Visual Studio account management features. So I've already linked my developer tenant account in here, but I can choose from different accounts if I need to add a new one. I can obviously go through the process here of adding a new account. If I hit continue, it's going to do the initial setup, and we get told what's happening in the output, so we can see that work has been done here with creating the application IDs as well, some internal kind of logs there. Basically, the manifest is being updated. Everything's being set up ready so that we can hit F5 and we can launch this tab into Teams. I'll just show you that if I go into the Azure portal, we can see that our community call app registration has been created, and we should be able to see in the permissions that, user.read is there. So again, really nice, simple way of being able to get started very quickly from an identity point of view. Okay, everything is now ready to run. So let's hit F5 or click the debug button. This is now running. and it's going to have some authentication there, just to authenticate us with Microsoft Teams. And when we're into Teams, we have the side loading window, so we can see what values in our manifest are being shown into Teams. So we can see the descriptions and the permissions that it's got, different versions. We've got the options to add it into different places in Teams. So either a specific team or a chat, or if I just click add, it will add it as a personal tab for me. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to click add. So we can see this is now running. We've also got some examples in here as well as for the code, where Teams Toolkit is providing us with helpers to get the user information of the current user. A few bits of information as well when you want to carry on to provision and deploy to the cloud and actually publish your app to Teams. Now, I'm going to go back to Visual Studio and let's just take a quick look at the components in here. So we have a welcome component. So this is the component that is being displayed on that very first screen that we saw. And we can see in here where we have the interoperability with the Teams JS SDK v2. So we can call the isInTeams method just to make sure that, yes, we're running in Teams, and there are other helpers that are provided, but it's a nice way of being able to interact with JavaScript through C# and reuse a library that is already out there and a library that you can already use. And we've also then got the example line where we're using the get user info async method on the Teams user credential to pull back the user information of the current user as well. So again, a really nice way of how Teams Toolkit is providing you with a link to an SDK. Definitely recommend that you check out the documentation for that SDK. There's tons of features in there and it's getting updated all of the time. And again, another nice, easy way to be able to get the user information. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. And what
Garry,
we will do, because
I've queued up questions for you towards the end, so there's like 4
okay.
so far, but keep going.
Perfect. Yeah, as I've got a little bit of time, so what I can do is I can just go through and show you how the bots work as well. So I think that'd be quite useful. So I already have I should have a project already open, but it might just be easier to just start from scratch. So let's create a new project. Let's call it community call bots. And let's choose a timer on Azure Functions. Okay, so this is now scaffolded our notification bots using an Azure function behind the scenes. Fairly similar setup in terms of the project structure from Teams Toolkit perspective. So we've got our FX folder again, where all our configuration is held. And in our templates folder as well, we've got the Teams app package and also the Azure templates as well for the bicep files. So those are there, again, done for us really nicely. Still get the benefit of the placeholders as well. So just to quickly show you that it's exactly the same. Easily inject that config in there. Really nice feature. If we take a look at our notify timer trigger, in here we can see that it's an Azure function. It runs every 30 seconds. If you've developed Azure functions in the past, this should be very familiar to you. What this is doing is using a timer trigger that's going to run every 30 seconds. And what it's going to do is it's just going to send a message as an adaptive card into a location where that bot is installed. So we can install things in Teams in all sorts of different locations. They can be personal, they can be in the context of a team, they can be in context of a chat or a group chat. So there is an abstraction here that allows us to return where that bot is installed within Teams, and then we can iterate through the installations, and then we can create our adaptive card. We actually have a card in here. So we can see a standard adaptive card that has, again, placeholders in there, so we can inject data in there. And we're going to pass in these values and send an adaptive card to that installation. So again, really simple, that there's a method on the installation location just to send a card back, which again makes it really nice and simple. One thing I did mention, just to reiterate, so when I was talking through the different types of apps that you can create and the different templates, because this is a bot, there is the dependency on ngrok. So I have ngrok running in the background. Not going to show it because it'll have my IP address on there. But it's running in the background on port 5130, which Teams Toolkit is looking for. So one of the things that it does when we go to prepare Teams apps dependencies is going to check and see if ngrok is running. If it's not, it will throw you a message back to say, you need to have it running on this port to work. So let's prepare the Teams app dependencies. Let's pass that ngrok check, and again, it's asking me for the account that I want to use to connect to my Microsoft 365 tenant. So I'll hit continue on there. Again, it's doing some work in the background. It's created an Azure AD app as well, but it's also, in this scenario, it's registering a bot with the bot framework as well in the background, which is again, really nice. So that has now finished. So let me run this app. So again, we're just sideloading this app into Teams. Click Add. And then, give it a few seconds, a message will appear into this chat as an adaptive card. In a few seconds, there we go. So here is our adaptive card. So here are the values that we were injecting into that card, and we've got an action button there as well. So we can click that and just go to the adaptive cards designer page. One of the really cool things, and this is a new feature in Visual Studio 2022, is I definitely recommend that you turn on the hot reload and hot reload on file save. So if you want to come into here and make those changes, the bot's running in the background, it's going to be triggered every 30 seconds. It's going to pick up your new code as well. So then you don't have to stop and restart the debug process and go through those steps again. So that will really speed up your development time. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to turn that bot off because that's going to get annoying getting a message every 30 seconds. But let's go back to our browser. So where's the best place to get more information about this? Well, there's the TeamFX GitHub repository. If you go to this repository, you'll see that it's kind of a bit lined to Visual Studio code. That's just the history at the moment, but there is Visual Studio content in there. There will be more added. But if you have any suggestions for new features, you run into any issues, here's a place where you can go and create a new issue. Create a new issue in the issues list, and the team will get back to you with some assistance. Alternatively, you can actually go through the help feature in Visual Studio as well. Use the report a problem or suggest a feature. The team are also triaging the messages that come through that way as well. And this way, actually, if you do have a bug, you get lots of telemetry that's sent for issues that you might have found with the tooling, so that can get to the team quicker. It might speed up as well the assistance that they can give you. So that's another neat feature that you can use. On that, I think, hopefully you've seen enough today that will kind of get you interested, that you can actually start installing, have a play around, and be really interested to see what you build, what your thoughts are, if we can make things better, what you like, what you don't like, and let's work together on this one. And I say thank you for listening today, and hopefully we've got a few questions. Fabian.
Yep, I queued them up for you in a list right there. If you can see chat, or you want me to read them?
Perfect. Yeah, if you can read them. I'm trying to find my...
Yeah, no worries. So I think Victor answered the first one. Is it only tab or command bot as well? That's Yasser, right, as well. Doesn't need it. Yasser, do you want to come off mute? Or did you get your answer to your question, if you're still here? No, I will come back to you. Paul's asking, are the capabilities in Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio the same as Visual Studio Code? I think you touched on it a little bit in the end, but you have a response for that one?
Yeah, so it's a great question, actually. And I was hoping someone would ask this. So, Paul, thank you very much. So, yeah, if you have an understanding of what Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code gives you, there's extra features in the Visual Studio Code version, such as API connections, SSO features as well. They're not in the Visual Studio version at the moment. It's primarily aimed at scaffolding and get it running. There isn't parity. That's not to say that they're not going to come later on, but there's a slightly different approach with the Visual Studio version. Based on feedback from the Visual Studio Code extension, there was a feeling that it was just doing too much and that it was abstracting so much away from you as a developer. It left you without as much control. So there's been a kind of a conscious thought of making sure that you're going through the steps as developer, and it's not hitting F5 and a magic wand is being thrown about and everything happening for you. So there's not parity just yet, but if there's something in there that you think, I've seen this in Visual Studio Code and I'd really like it in Visual Studio, then contact the team, get into the issues list, and that will be able to get prioritized for you.
Thanks, Gary, for that. And I think somewhere there you answered, and it's in the demo. So when we go back and look at the recording, sir, you'll see how Gary started the installer, went back into into his tooling. I think it was under ASP.NET applications, and then light up the checkbox for Teams development. That's how you get it inside the installer. The other question, which is more of it's a consideration question, I guess. I wonder when to use Visual Studio Code vis-a-vis Visual Studio 2022 for Teams development. Any guidelines? I guess it's more preferential at best, but what are your thoughts around it? Do you get that question often, Gary?
So I know that there's a lot of, certainly for bots, there's a lot of samples already out there for .NET and C#. So I think leveraging the Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio will give you a bit of a leg up there, if you like, because the SDKs have been around for longer than the JavaScript SDKs have been around. But it's down to what your preferences are, right? I think and hearing feedback, a lot of people have been thinking, I'm doing Teams development, I have to use JavaScript, or I have to use TypeScript, and I think that's been a real concern. That's not the case. You can use .NET, you can use anything. It's just, it's a web app in the end of the day, or it's just code running in the cloud. Teams just needs to point to where your application is running. So you can use, different technologies and mix and match. And if you're comfortable, .NET and C#, then definitely, check out this new feature, and you'll be able to hopefully get up up and running even quicker than having to maybe force yourself to learn a different technology just to build apps for Teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big proponent of that. I do not want to learn any more JavaScript than I need to be able to Google and Stack Overflow. So thank you for that.